Hello, let's talk about books. I'm sat really uncomfortably on the floor because we're getting up close and personal with my non-fiction collection. We're coming to the lower shelves of this situation. I'm going to link in the cards and down below this entire playlist where we're just doing a tour of my non-fiction shelves because they're my favorites. They're my favorite books. I love them so much, and I don't want you to miss out on anything exciting we've talked about before. But today we're doing 400s, which is language. Now, we're working with the Dewey Decimal System, which was designed by a white American in the early 20th century or late 19th century. So it's super white, super European and American focused. So when we're talking about languages today, we're talking about all the European languages, and then literally everything else is at the end. Literally everything else is at the end. So take that with a grain of salt. But I also don't have that many books, so it's going to be a real quick one. So in the, already my hip has given up. In the 400s, oh, there's a cat hair on my face. In the 400 section is just a broad overview of language, and I have nothing in that section. Then moving on to 410, that's linguistics. And I do have a book that I actually talked about recently, so I'm going to link that review. This is Proust and the Squid, The Story and Science of the Reading Brain by Maryanne. And it's about how the brain acquires reading skill, because it's not something that we are born with. It is something that every human has to put together symbols and sounds and turn that into reading for themselves. And of course, not everybody can do that. That's how we end up with reading disabilities like dyslexia. So that was super interesting. Proust and the Squid was published in 2007, and the call number here is 418.4019, which is the psychological principles of reading. Next we have the 420, which is English and Old English languages, and that is where your English dictionaries will sit. So I have a few. I have this beat up guy that I was required for my HSC many moons ago. HSC is the highest school certificate in New South Wales. It's the final years of high school. This one is the second edition of the Pocket Macquarie Dictionary, which was published in 1989. I promise that is not the year I did my HSC. And the call number for dictionaries is 423, Dictionaries of Standard English. And then also in my collection, I have the Oxford Modern English Dictionary. This is the 1992 published edition. And it tells me on the back it has up-to-date new words, including bum bag, bungee jumping, crop circle, gobsmacked, karaoke, liposuction, womanist, and zook. As a dictionary, the call number there is also 423. Then at university, I learned Latin and I needed to learn the words of grammar, because even though I can grammar, I can't tell you about grammar. So I bought Diane, Henderson and Rosemary Morris Grammar Essentials, a reference dictionary. This is from 2008. And the call number here is 425, which is Grammar of Standard English. And it's really got things like what punctuation things are called and how you use them in a sentence, homophones, synonyms, pronouns, that sort of thing. It's very basic, but also when my child was learning grammar, very useful. In fact, Emma and I learned grammar at the same time because I was doing it through Latin and she was doing it through English, and so we could compare notes on what things meant. I also bought this, which was a really good buy. It's called The Greatest Gatsby, a visual book of grammar from 2015 by Tohby, Riddle, and it's got illustrations. What have we got there? Articles. So we have The Great Gatsby or A Great Gatsby. The difference between definite and indefinite articles there. Very useful to me, I gotta tell you. Don't regret buying. Again, 425, which is Grammar of Standard English. Then when I decided I was doing an English degree, I bought Close Reading The Basics by David Greenham, which is, I have filmed a review of this, so I will link that as well. Call number here is 428.40711, Reading in the English Language. And this was just a really good primer on how to do the close critical reading that you do in English. And I found it really useful. Would you need this if you weren't doing an English degree? No. This floor is not comfortable. Then the 430s are German, and related language. The 440s are French and related languages. The 450s is Italian and related languages. Are you seeing the European theme? 460 is Spanish and Portuguese languages. 470 is Latin and Italic languages. And we have some Latin stuff here. So these are the textbooks I used to learn Latin at uni. I start off with Peter V. Jones and Keith C. Sidwell's Reading Latin. This is grammar, vocabulary, and exercises. So this is all the things you need to learn for Latin, all starting out from a very basic lessons through to really complicated stuff. And then the companion piece for that, sorry, that's 470, which is Latin and Italic languages. And this version was published in 1989. And then to go along with it is Peter V. Jones and Keith C. Sidwell's Reading Latin. This is text. So this is all just Latin in here. And you translate it as you go through this beefy one. And eventually you can Latin in theory. This one was published in 1986 and the call number is also 470, Latin and Italic languages. And then the thing about translating is you never get a one-for-one equation of meaning for a word. So you need something like a dictionary. So this is the Pocket Oxford Latin Dictionary from 2005. Call number here is 473.21, which is Latin to English dictionaries, surprisingly. The first part is Latin words that you can look up a translation to English, and then the second half is English words you can look up a translation to Latin. So let's pick a random page, and we've got congelo, to congeal, curdle, freeze, or grow hard. Then I have the Revised Latin Primer. This is the one that my Latin professor specifically said if you're going to get a primer, get this one. This was first published in 1962 and the call number is 475, which is Latin grammar. And so again, this is very similar to that big chunky textbook with declensions, verbs, irregular verbs, different pronouns, declension of Greek nouns. Because Latin is such an old language now, it's a dead language, and this is classical Latin, not medieval ecclesiastical Latin. It's good to have just different points of view about how to attack a word. Speaking of medieval Latin, I bought Keith Sidwell's version of Reading Medieval Latin, which is the same as those Latin textbooks, but for medieval Latin. I've never cracked this. I didn't do enough Latin at uni to be eligible to do medieval Latin, so it's just sitting here. Call number of this one is 477, which is Latin dialects, and it was published in 1995. This one, which take that off the front there, Latin verb drills, was very useful when I had exams. This is by Richard E. Pryor. The call number here is 478.68, which is Latin primers, and was published in 2005. And it's just exercises. Translate the following verbs into Latin using the vocabulary provided. So just practice translating and declining and conjugating. This one at 478.68 Latin primers is the guide to going through those two Latin textbooks. So this is the instructions, and then you go through the exercises, and then you go through the Latin text and do like a big chunky translation exercise. So all three of those together are necessary and also great. And then I don't have this one in my list, but it lives on the shelf, and that is the Usborne Latin Words sticker book. So these are stickers of regular everyday things with their Latin name. So on this page we've got biblioteca, which is a feminine noun, which means library. We've got arx, which is feminine, which means citadel. We've got ignis, which is masculine and means fire. Up here we've got flumen, which is a neuter verb and means river. Lots and lots of, oh, there's a cat. Fides. Anyway, bit of fun. That's it for my shelves, but there's still more DDC categories There is 480, which is classical and Greek and modern Greek languages. And then 490, which is other languages, which is literally every other language you can think of, because all the other languages are not from Europe, right? That's not even true, because you've got Celtic and Anglo-Saxon, and so anyway, that's the bias of the Dewey Decimal System, as long as we're aware of what we're getting into. So that's a nice short one. There's not many books there. It's mainly to do with Latin learning, which honestly is the best fun and one of the hardest things I ever did. Loved it. Big chapters of my life, learning to read and speak English, learning to read and speak Latin. Pretty hefty things to do. I have linked the other ones in this playlist, and there will be more because the Dewey Decimal System goes all the way up to 900. So I'll see you again for the rest of these episodes. Bye.